Moving on to our very first panel discussion on aligning cybersecurity initiatives with business objectives. We have our very well-renowned panelists. Now, let me quickly introduce them. We have Mr. Felix Thomas Vaz. He is the CEO and President of DataSat. And we also have Ms. Claude Al-Ghamri. She is Senior Cybersecurity Researcher, a government entity at Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Then we have Mr. Mamdo Al-Zahrani. He is Senior Vice President, Head Cybersecurity Intelligence from a financial entity of Saudi Arabia. Then we have Mr. Mukhtar Al-Somali, Group Chief Information Security Officer at JDIA. And lastly, our eminent panel moderator, Mr. Abdullah Marghalani, Senior Cybersecurity Chief Officer, Medina Health Cluster, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. All the best to the panelists, and over to you, Abdullah, to moderate the panel for the next 30 minutes.
Thank you, Bridget. Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and welcome and hello in this our evening. This is Abdullah Marghalani, the Cybersecurity Chief Officer in Medina Health Cluster. 93% of security leaders don't report the CEO, yet 60% say they should to provide a more accurate understanding of security risk facing the organization. This research, according to logarithm.com, show us a huge major issue that we as cybersecurity leaders need to figure out and how we can change it. It is not surprised that more than 60% of organizations had cyber attack in the past 2 years. The expanding attack surface caused by digital transformation, cloud migration, and remote working are well-known currency for IT security leaders. But is the board truly on the same page about the potential threats that business face? The difference between what cybersecurity teams and why they do it, what cybersecurity teams do and why they do it, is suitable but important. When it comes aligning cybersecurity with business objectives, I remember one cybersecurity guy working in one company selling jeans says, "I am here to protect the ability of the company to sell jeans." These words are simple, but has a very deep meaning. It means that these guys know exactly what is the business object and how much he is aligned with his company goals. How exactly security leaders influence decision across the enterprise? Is security leadership and C-suite truly aligned with common goals, or are there gaps in that results in more risk to the organization? In coming minutes, we will discuss this with my guests in the panel discussion. Please help me to welcome first Mr. Felix, the CEO and President of DataSat company. Welcome, Mr. Felix.
Thanks, Abdullah. It's a pleasure to be on this distinguished panel.
Appreciate your joining today. Also, we have the cybersecurity engineer, Ms. Claude Al-Ghamri. Ms. Claude, thank you for joining us today, and I hope with you and you will have informative discussion today.
Thank you so much, Abdullah. It's my honor to be here with you all. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. And to the Senior Vice President, Mr. Mamdouh Al-Zahrani. Mr. Mamdouh, I am happy to have you in this discussion today. Thank you for joining us, and I am very excited to have discussion with you today. Also, we will Mr. Mukhtar Sulami, the Chief Information Security Officer. Mr. Mukhtar, appreciate your time and thank you for joining us, and I cannot wait to hear your inputs and opinion regarding our interest topic.
Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you very much, and I'm so glad to be part of this valuable and discussion that we will have around this very interesting topic. Thank you.
Thank you. So, dear listener, for now and to not take longer time, let's start and hear from our panelists. And allow me to start with Ms. Khulud. Ms. Khulud, let me start by asking you, why do we need alignment between security initiatives and business objectives?
Thank you, Abdullah, for the question. And I think this is a good point to know in the beginning why we need the alignment between the security initiatives and business goals. So as we know all about the cybersecurity project, they are costly and we cannot see its benefits immediately once it's initiated. So it needs more time to give its results and impact on the organization level or on the cybersecurity department level. So it's important for business to understand this point exactly, to give it time. And also it's important for cybersecurity initiatives objectives to be translated to business language so it can fulfill the organization requirements and also can fulfill the organization strategy objective and goals. On the other hand, cybersecurity implementation with overall business objectives, it's essential and important to protect the business functions and sustainability against any kind of attack, breach, or intrusion that can affect the organization functions. So I believe it all starts with the understanding, defining, and eventually aligning the cybersecurity, the relationship between the cybersecurity and the core business functions, IT assets, and the data in the organization itself.
Thank you, Ms. Khulud. Actually, you said very important sentence, which is cybersecurity initiatives goes to be translated to business language. This means a security leader intend to better aligning security with business objectives should start by learning about business itself.
Yes, that's right.
Also, according to Gartner, probably 10% of CISO understand that most executive teams are not interested in cybersecurity. They are interested in business risk. As security, so as a security practitioner, we have to mitigate the conversation to one of their comfortable, not ours. Board members typically care about share prices, customer satisfaction, and the financial bottom line, not IT-oriented performance and health metrics. Adding that, CISO needs to learn to present complying narratives that explicitly align security with business objectives by explaining how it protects either the brand's reputation, people, or supply chain. If they don't understand, then we haven't done all. Thank you, Mr. Flood, for this answer and for and now we are moving to Mr. Felix. Mr. Felix, cybersecurity is mandatory for any organization. Also, security cannot be afterthought. This reactive versus proactive approach leaves more opportunities for vulnerabilities. If a breach were to occur, the organization could potentially face compliance violations, lawsuits, loss of international property, intellectual property, discard brand loyalty, a decline in customer trust, and more. They are all consequences that cloud affect business operation and revenue for years to come. My question is, how can organization mitigate the high cost for a non-core function to mitigate impact and a bottom line and the bottom line?
Thanks, Mr. Abdallah. That's a very interesting question. I think it's a question which very often is overseen. I like the example you brought about the CISO of a jeans company. The purpose of cybersecurity is not to protect against cyber attacks. It's to protect the business and make sure that the business can continue to serve its customers. This leads, the comparison with an insurance is not completely fair, for example, because the bottom line may not be the main concern, but it's the ensuring of the continuance of a viable business. Investment in cybersecurity is not an insurance. An insurance is compensating parts of the losses. Cybersecurity is trying to avoid, to prevent that the company is closing down or limits the impact of any cyber attack. Cyber attacks happen, if you like them or not, everybody will be affected. There is still discussions where in the organization should cybersecurity reside. It's the easy way by many boards, another point which you raised very rightly, to leave it with the technical team or with the finance team, which I personally believe is not the right location in the organization. It is an organization on its own because finance or technical team are prone to be attacked and be targets of attacks themselves. So their decision-making will be very much affected. In order to mitigate the impact on the bottom line, I think there's three main areas to be considered. First of all, access to talent and war for talent. How do you build and operate and get economies of scale for your in-house cybersecurity team? Or should you go for a partnership? Many organizations play with cybersecurity as a pure investment by the IT organization, like buying a server, but building a team yourself may not be the right way. Secondary, it's the technology platform and the threat environment. The technology platforms are constantly emerging. I think all of us who have been in the industry for some time know what was up to the state of the art 2 years ago, today is obsolete. So can a company afford to invest in a technology platform and try to keep it running? Or, and is it distracting too much from the core business of the company? Or should the company work with a number of managed service and technology partners who provide cybersecurity as a service and provide it as on an OpEx model and keep yourself up to date? Last but not least, data sovereignty rules and regulations are changing. So it's very important to understand up to date which systems and data needs to reside on-prem with the organization, which can be handled internationally or which can be handled in country. And that's something which I think is very often overseen and can lead to a lot of follow-up costs by getting it wrong from the beginning. An organization, if they build a factory or they want to improve their business processes, they work with the experts, they work with architects, they work with consultants. In cybersecurity, very often they are still playing in-house and build their own processes, their own governance, or don't perform the regular drills. So I believe that technology selection and team building is almost secondary, but it's important to work with the right partners who support the business, understand the business, and help you through the full life cycle of the business. Never leave it to supply chain or IT to select the right platform and build very likely an over-dimensioned platform or in a platform which will be underutilized and you don't achieve the economies of scale. This can only be achieved by working with external partners and very likely not a single partner which covers all the needs. It also will allow benchmarking and provide a layered defense. So if one of the partners fails, you are still protected as an organization. After all, I think no management team should forget cybersecurity costs are not sunk costs, but basically no cybersecurity or neglecting cybersecurity very likely will kill your business in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Felix. Actually, I agree with you. especially that for security, it is to be a business enabler. It is essentially to strike the right kind of partnership with the board and the executive team. Of course, this is only my okay, now let's go with Mr. Mamdouh. Mr. Mamdouh. Mr. Mamdouh, do you hear me?
تفضل الله يحييك. Yes, please. I can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, Mr. Mamdouh. Mr. Mamdouh, business nowadays drive new trend in technology and information security. On the other end, would be positively respond in case to no forward thinking leaders in active thinking ahead. My question is, what information security leaders would pursue to have this addressed?
Thank you very much for your question. It's a very interesting aspect that nowadays we can see businesses driving all sorts of technology and digital trends. Previously, it used to be technical people, IT, and even information security team members driving the different activities in terms of technology and digital. Nowadays, we can see the business is actually driving the new trends. It is actually making certain trends to be certain facts, even though technical teams and information security industry does not agree 100% on that. And that made the industry evolve significantly during the past years. I do believe that information security leaders nowadays should be forward thinkers in terms of adopting new technologies and adapting to certain practices that secure their organization and enterprises. The best example on this is cloud implementation and the different technology vendors that they've been promoting different solutions across the industry. So we've been using certain technologies as a technical control. These technologies has evolved to become a practice. An example is zero trust concepts. It's simply different aspects of processes and thinking process that makes zero trust what it makes, or makes zero trust what people think of it. So in simple words, forward-thinking leaders are actually driving the different trends in technology. Cloud implementation, as an example, has evolved from pure cloud into hybrid module, and information security needs to understand these technologies, how to implement them, and how to secure them. And the main driver for information security teams is highlighting the right risks to the right individuals. On the other hand, the old practices that we know, the traditional practices that we know, and the traditional security controls and the technical controls we know can be adapted by certain practices similar to the zero trust practices. So certain firewalls, certain software-defined network, certain concepts and ideas that we can utilize can actually introduce another layer of risk management towards addressing business objectives. That's what I believe, how security leaders should be considering new trends and technologies, not to mention the other trends that is popular in the industry nowadays. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm mute myself. Thank you, Mr. Mamdouh. And now let's start with Mr. Mukhtar. Engineer Mukhtar, thank you for waiting, and allow me to ask you, if we work for an organization where the business and cyber alignment is already relatively mature, then the path becoming a business aligned security leader will be fairly clear, even if it doesn't require considered efforts to navigate. But if you happen and to work for an organization on the lower end of the alignment maturity scale, your journey will be far more challenging, since there's no one size fit all approaches. During this case, my question is how to develop cybersecurity strategy that fit the organization.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullah, for this interesting question. Actually, it's a very, as you mentioned, if you are in a very mature environment, that will be an easy for the CISO to do this alignment. But if it's like, as you mentioned, lower matured, that will be a very challenging. So here we can take like the top four recommendations from the CISO's analysis to achieve this more effectively and to do the business alignment by developing a cybersecurity strategy which will fit the organization. The first thing will be our recommendation will be that the CISO should know the business. So by knowing the business and the mission and the vision of statement of the organization, that will help the CISO to develop the cybersecurity strategy, and also the priorities of the board and initiatives. That also will help him to develop this strategy. And on top of that, you can also check the industry and market trends, which the organization is part of. That also will help him to develop a very good strategy. Second recommendation will be to partner with the executives and board. So of course, if to successful alignment with the cybersecurity initiatives with the business goals, CISO needs to buy in from and access to their CISO, to their CEO, sorry, and to their boards of directors, which will help him to understand where is the business going or what is the business directions. So it's not a very good practice that not having the cybersecurity team or the cybersecurity team in the room when the business goals are being decided. This is a very huge mistake, and this is going to lead to very risk business directions. And the third recommendation on this topic will be that learn to speak business. As my colleagues mentioned earlier, this is a very, very, very important point, that the CISOs should learn how to speak business, because a significant percentage of enterprise board members, let's say 1 out of 5, dissatisfied with the quality of the cybersecurity information they are receiving today or currently from the security managers. And this is according to Gartner's 2021 survey. So this is very important that the CISOs should understand how to speak the business language. Also, the last, or it's going to be the last point, which is going to be here as a recommendation, that recognize that cybersecurity is a cost, not a goal. And it's not a matter of aligning the cybersecurity with business objectives or business aligning to be secure, but rather than a combination, between the risk trade-offs and jointly explored to determine the path forward to the business. So we can consider it as a type of, here I can mention that we can consider the cybersecurity as type of any other kind of insurance cost. So for example, here, if I mention that we have all of us here in these days that car insurance, but this car insurance we pay for it yearly, but during the year there is no accident happen, thank God. So cybersecurity is similar to this concept, which is you're gonna have this cost and you should pay for it, and you should have it in place to avoid any breaches happening. And when this breach is happening, you will be covered by this insurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mukhtar, for sharing this informative information. Actually, one of points remind me of regardless of where your organization fall on alignment maturity. And this guide me to mention an interview with Kevin Kerr, the CISO of Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Oak Ridge, with the tenable.com, and allow me to say his word. As he said, Kerr advised that the CISO news to get out from behind their desk and walk around, talk to people, learn people's concerns and objectives at the various level, bottom to top, understand what's going on. Don't listen only to your IT people because they were judged from their IT point of view. Go see what's going on the business point, or what is going on the business point of view, and listen. This is what he said. Of course, in current COVID-19 pandemic, you may have performed such as walkbot virtuality, but whether it's done face-to-face or via Zoom, the efforts will benefit your organization and your career. It gets your name around, and if people know you are there to help them figure out the best way to do what they want while still protecting the organization, they will welcome your participation, of course. Thank you, Mr. Mukhtar. And now back to Mr. Felix. Mr. Felix, allow me to ask you, how can cybersecurity become a competitive advantage for non-ICT company? Mr. Felix?
You're on mute, Mr. Felix. Okay, there you go.
Thanks, Abdullah. Sorry for that. Still learning after 2 years being online. It's a very interesting question. Thanks a lot for that, because it really puts the focus between business and cybersecurity. As we all know, today everybody is online. Every organization relates to its partners, its customers, its governmental agencies, where Saudi is one of the world leaders, I think, in e-government via online services or omnipresent mobile apps. For any consumer or any customer to putting financial services, investments, critical business processes, or personal credit card details with a company online, it's a big leap of trust. And cyberspace is driven by COVID, but also by the developments in technology. So any organization who is moving there to build this trust, it's absolutely critical to be part of the decision process of any consumer. It's therefore can be expected to be a major impact on the success or failure of a company or of any campaign. So what are the lessons which we learn from that? I believe, obviously, a company needs to have a comprehensive cyber defense strategy from the first day. It must be in the DNA of the organization. So coming what my colleagues on the panel were mentioning, what you were mentioning before, you need to speak the business language, and the business needs to speak cyber language. Otherwise, it's impacting growth and also access to funding and investors. The KPIs and the measurements need to be properly defined. The number of detected alerts and attacks is not something you want to communicate. You have to communicate meaningful ways to give confidence to investors and customers. Benchmarking and then sharing with industry peers is something which is extremely important and can help you identify areas where you can improve your communication with your customers and with the market. And generally, it's sensitive information, but again, here comes the partnership with the right partners to identify what needs to be measured, what needs to be communicated. Technology.
Yeah, I would like to interrupt, dear Felix. I'm so sorry, we are running short of time. So I would request Abdullah to conclude shortly.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Felix.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Dear listener, before to moving and in this discussion today, allow me to say, becoming business aligned cybersecurity leader is marathon, not a sprint. It's required learning how to speak language of business and technology with equal fluency. But modern security threats require a new approach. The future belongs to security leaders who are really ready to manage cybersecurity as a business risk. This is a conclusion of what my guest and the panelists today share with us. Thank you, Mr. Mukhtar Al-Sulami, Mr. Mahmoud Mamdouh Al-Zahrani, Ms. Khulud Al-Ghamdi, and Mr. Felix for this informative and rich information. For myself, I enjoyed of this discussion. I am sure our listener joined also. Thank you, dear listener. You were, and leaders, you were great listener. Thank you for joining, and back to you, Bridget.
Yes, thank you very much, dear panelists, Felix, and of course, Abdullah, for wonderfully moderating, giving panelists homework to do. Truly appreciate it, and sharing your wonderful insight. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the session.